Hi, mystery writers. Hi, welcome. I hope you're all staying warm. It's big winter storms here, and I just want to warn you that we have been alerted to possible power outages. So if I suddenly disappear, that's what happened. um, and also, just so you won't be disconcerted, I have this little spot on my nose, and I had a biopsy the other day, and so this little spot's going to be with me for a while, so I hope it's not too disconcerting. All right, so today I wanted to address some issues that often face beginning writers. But if you're an experienced writer, we're going to have a session about verbs, and you may want to stay tuned for that. So let's talk about some shortcuts to writing like a pro, because I'm going to talk about 5 different things that kind of signal that you're a new writer, because professional writing is geared toward readers. There's just no other way to think about it. It's not about you, it's about your readers. So anything that draws the reader out of the story and calls attention to your writing is not worth it. So writing craft takes practice, and I was just attending a little session earlier today about writing craft, and the one thing that everyone agreed on that is that craft improves as you keep writing. So keep writing. The benefit is that your story is appreciated. Your readers like your story, and the more you write, your craft will improve. So let's look at the 5 writing mistakes that will keep you out of an agent or editor slush pile and garner you more readers. If you learn to recognize these mistakes, you can fix them as you go. So as your awareness builds, you'll be able to avoid them at the first draft level. And for beginning writers, is of things that you check when you go through your first edits. Okay, so he said, she said, one of the things you want to skip is your characters bellowing or whispering or exclaiming or whining. Don't underestimate your readers. All you need to say is said. Readers are conditioned, as it were, to just not read that word. They mentally skip the word said. So even in long dialogue exchanges, you don't need to use it often. If you need to emphasize an emotion, you can insert a character action in a sentence. Craig pounded the table with his fist and said. So that works so much better than Craig said angrily. So stick pretty much with said or ask. That's all you need. Okay, number 2 is italics. They're like exclamation points. You just don't really need them in your manuscript. You don't need them to emphasize words or phrases. If your character is thinking, write the sentence so the readers know that's what your character is thinking. That's all you need. You don't need italics. I know that some editors and some publishers want italics, but as you're writing, try and skip the italics. Here's what happens when you do that. You really think about what it is your character is thinking and put it into a direct sentence. It's just a lot easier, and your readers will understand that's what your character is thinking rather than needing the italics, because italics kind of pull your reader out of the story. I've also noticed in some books that I've read that, say it's the antagonist's diary and he's writing about how he hates so-and-so or whatever it is, and people put those diary entries in italics. Well, when you have a long passage in italics, it makes it even harder to read. So the whole idea of this is to make it as easy for your reader to read your story as possible. So skip italics. All right. Another one is head hopping in a scene. Each scene has one point of view, so keep your reader with that character's head. Hopping back and forth between characters in a scene actually confuses readers. If you want to get in another character's head, write a different scene from their perspective and keep it in that character's point of view. The basic rule of thumb is one point of view per scene. So what I have seen with beginning writers is the main point of view character, let's call him Jim, and he's talking with Lisa, and all of a sudden they write a sentence about what Lisa is thinking or what Lisa feels, and there's no way that point of view character can know what Lisa is feeling. So if you want to give hints about how Lisa is reacting in that conversation, instead of going into that Lisa's head, as it were, you can describe any physical actions that would reflect how that character is responding. So one head per scene. All right. The next is using modifiers like adverbs and adjectives, and you heavily weight your sentences with all these modifiers. And you are a wordsmith, so choose your words with precision. Simple clarity keeps your reader reading. The more precise you are, the less you need adjectives and adverbs. So use strong active verbs and forget the adverbs. And one of the things you can do when you're editing is to search for words that end in ly and see how adverbs actually pop up in your writing. And if you're finding a lot of them, you probably want to do some work with your verbs to find stronger verbs and eliminate many adjectives. And then the last one that often happens with beginning writers is showing off how smart you are. You don't need to use big words when a simpler one will do. You don't want your readers stopping reading your story in order to go look up those words in a dictionary. So skip overriding complex descriptions to show to show you know a lot about something. You want to stay out of the reader's way so they can enjoy your story. So simple, clear writing keeps your reader turning pages. So keep practicing your craft. You'll be way ahead of novice writers who ignore writing craft and think the story idea is all it takes. Readers prefer a well-told story, and your attention to craft creates a difference. It separates you from the many, many writers who are too impatient to learn. Okay, so let's talk about a set of verbs that can pop up a lot, and ways to get around those verbs, using those verbs. So story is essentially action, and verbs create action. And when your characters act, act, readers turn the pages. But you may slow down your readers when you go inside your character's head, not because you're going inside their head, but because you revert to what I call thought verbs. They're verbs that you use to tell your reader what your character is thinking, and you want to avoid them. So here are some major thought verbs: think, know, understand, realize, believe, want, remember, imagine, desire. And I know that I catch myself using realize. We all have favorite words that we use, and I know that every time my character realizes something, whoops, I've got to rewrite that sentence. So each of these verbs and many others tell readers rather than showing. So Fight Club author Chuck Palahniuk wrote about thought verbs in Lit Reactor. His advice is, thinking is abstract. Knowing and believing are intangible. Your story will always be stronger if you just show the physical actions and details of your characters and allow your reader to do the thinking and knowing and loving and hating. I thought that was great advice. Allow your reader to do the thinking and knowing. You'll make your writing dynamic by changing each instance of a thought verb, like know, realize, think, etc., into a descriptive passage where action and sensory detail shine through. So I think when you're in the editing stage, just catching those verbs and spending time rewriting will help your story pop, actually, for the reader. Thought verbs often start as the premise sentence to a paragraph. A simple workaround is to remove the first sentence, use the following details in the paragraph, and then restate the premise at the end minus the thought verb. Okay, so let's look at an example. Conrad knew he was trapped. The thick iron door slammed behind him. He heard the lock fall into place. No signal to his mobile in this underground space, so he couldn't call for help. Somewhere in the dark, Charles Collins waited for his first stumbling move. So let's try rewriting that without the thought verbs. The thick iron door slammed behind him. He heard the lock fall into place. No signal to his mobile in this underground space. He couldn't call for help. Somewhere in this dark, Jack Collins waited for his first stumbling move. Conrad was trapped. So that's kind of the difference, and you've gotten rid of that thought verb knew. That's just an example. A more advanced technique is to remove the thought sentence verb and replace it with sensory action. Show the reader why that thought would be in the character's mind. So here we go, another example. Becky knew Emmy should marry Mr. Dobbins. That's why she had to show Emmy the letter. Then without the thought verb. Emmy sighed at the memory of George. His goodness lived in her heart all these years. Becky reached in her bag and pulled out her letter from George, the one she kept. Emmy's face lit up when she saw George's handwriting. Her trembling fingers reached for the paper. She read the letter. So that's all about detail, and you want to write detail by detail. Your reader follows each action and will understand what the character knows without needing it stated. Your prose is richer and your reader gets an emotional ride. They may not understand why they like your story, but they will. So scout in your manuscript. Improve your manuscript by searching for thought verbs and scrutinize one and rewrite to add action detail. And when you replace the thought verbs, your story becomes stronger. Replacing thought verbs will improve your storytelling skills. So go through the manuscript for each of the 9 verbs, and then read the paragraph as it is and decide whether you want to reverse the sentence order in the paragraph or replace the thought sentence with a new action detail paragraph and write the new sequence. If you've been shortcutting important story information with thought verbs, you face a bracing revision. Your story will be stronger with action and detail to encourage your reader. Instead of telling, you show your readers why your character thinks, realizes, wants, or hates. So let's look at another example. Mary hated Jim. Right? Jim sat down at the adjacent desk. Mary cringed, waiting for the next humiliating, sarcastic statement. He uttered them sotto voce, but loud enough for the 6 other people in the office to hear. Mary heard the snickers. She winced at the sardonic smiles she didn't see. Today was her day for revenge. So there you go. Add detail so readers have a sense of place and action. Action verbs create empathy and understanding that no thought verb can convey. All right, so it's pretty much from knowing to going. Once you understand how thought verbs slow down your story, you'll be eager to add detail and action. And even when writing your first draft, as soon as you use a thought verb, you'll know it's time to get deeper into the story. And it's really hard to break habits. I just want to emphasize that because, as I mentioned earlier, realize is one of my thought verbs, and I still, Axel realize, and oops, as soon as I write it, I know, whoops, I've got to redo it. But the first thing that comes into my head is that. And so if you think about those thought verbs and are aware of them, it's easy to catch yourself as you're writing and do the rewrite right at that moment instead of having to go back to your editing phase. All right, I hope that helps. Please add your comments below and share your ideas with the other people in the group. This is all about sharing our writing experience, and I will see you next week.